Support for Afghan Fatemiyoun Division, 2012-present. In the unforgiving landscape of Syria's brutal civil war, where alliances shifted and battle lines blurred, a new force emerged that would play a critical role in defending Iran's interests and propping up Bashar al-Assad's regime. This force was the Fatemiyoun Division, an Iranian-backed militia composed primarily of Afghan Shia fighters. Created, trained, and armed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, the Fatemiyoun Division became one of Tehran's most effective tools in its campaign to secure Syria and expand its influence across the region. For the IRGC, the Fatemiyoun Division was not just another proxy. It was a testament to Iran's ability to recruit, mobilize, and deploy foreign fighters to serve its strategic interests. The origins of the Fatemiyoun Division can be traced back to the early days of the Syrian conflict in 2012, when the Assad regime, a crucial Iranian ally, was on the brink of collapse. The IRGC recognized the existential threat posed by Syrian opposition forces and jihadist groups such as ISIS and al-Nusra Front. Determined to prevent the fall of Assad's regime, the IRGC began mobilizing Shia fighters from across the region. Among the most vulnerable and easily recruited were Afghan refugees living in Iran, many of whom had fled decades of war and instability in their homeland. The IRGC's recruitment strategy targeted Afghan Shia, primarily from the Hazara ethnic community, who had been living in Iran as refugees. These Hazaras, already marginalized and impoverished, were offered promises of financial incentives, residency permits, and even Iranian citizenship in exchange for their service. The IRGC presented the fight in Syria as a sacred duty, a defense of Shia holy sites, particularly the revered Sayyida Zainab Shrine in Damascus, which had become a symbolic rallying point for Shia militias. By 2014, the Fatemiyoun Division had been formally established as a distinct fighting force under the command of the IRGC's Quds Force. Thousands of Afghan recruits were sent to Syria, where they received rigorous training in guerrilla warfare, urban combat, and asymmetric tactics. Iranian military advisors, many of them seasoned IRGC commanders, oversaw their training and deployment, ensuring that the Fatemiyoun fighters were not only well prepared for battle, but also ideologically aligned with Iran's revolutionary vision. The Fatemiyoun Division was deployed to some of Syria's most dangerous and strategically vital front lines. From Aleppo to Palmyra, the Afghan fighters were tasked with defending Assad's strongholds and reclaiming territory lost to opposition forces. They fought alongside other Iranian-backed militias, including Hezbollah and the Iraqi Harakat al-Nujaba, in joint operations that turned the tide of the Syrian war in Assad's favor. The Fatemiyoun Division was often used as cannon fodder, bearing the brunt of the most grueling battles and suffering heavy casualties in the process. The IRGC's use of the Fatemiyoun Division was not merely about military pragmatism. It was about building a loyal, ideologically driven force that could be deployed wherever Iran's interests were threatened. For the IRGC, the Fatemiyoun fighters were expendable assets, willing to sacrifice their lives in a war that was framed as a defense of Shia Islam. But beneath the veneer of religious duty was a stark reality. Afghan refugees, desperate for economic stability and a chance at a better life, were being exploited and sent to die in a foreign war. The Fatemiyoun Division's battlefield performance was impressive, but it came at a steep human cost. Thousands of Afghan fighters lost their lives in Syria, their bodies often returned to Iran for burial with little recognition or acknowledgement. The families of the fallen were left with meager compensation and unfulfilled promises, while the IRGC continued to replenish the ranks of the Fatemiyoun with new recruits. For the Afghan fighters, the dream of a better life in exchange for their service often ended in a shallow grave. Iran's support for the Fatemiyoun Division extended beyond training and deployment. The IRGC provided the division with advanced weaponry, including rockets, mortars, and small arms, ensuring that the Afghan fighters were equipped to take on a variety of threats. Iranian advisors embedded with the Fatemiyoun offered real-time battlefield guidance, while logistical support ensured a steady flow of supplies to the front lines. But the Fatemiyoun division's role was not confined to Syria. The IRGC had a broader vision for this force, one that extended beyond the Syrian battlefield. By cultivating a loyal and experienced fighting force, the IRGC created a ready-made militia that could be deployed to other theaters of conflict where Iranian interests were at stake. Reports have surfaced suggesting that Fatemiyoun fighters were later sent to Iraq and even considered for deployment to Yemen, where Iranian-backed Houthi rebels have been fighting a Saudi-led coalition. The Fatemiyoun division's existence also served a broader strategic purpose for Iran. By drawing in Afghan fighters, the IRGC minimized the political risks associated with deploying Iranian forces directly to Syria. This allowed Iran to maintain plausible deniability while ensuring that its strategic objectives were achieved through proxies. The Fatemiyoun division became a crucial element of Iran's asymmetric warfare strategy, an expendable force that absorbed casualties while advancing Tehran's interests. However, Iran's exploitation of Afghan refugees to fuel its proxy wars did not go unnoticed. Human rights organizations and international watchdogs condemned the IRGC's recruitment of vulnerable Afghan migrants, labeling it as a form of coercion and exploitation. Critics argued that Iran's use of impoverished Afghan refugees as cannon fodder in Syria violated international humanitarian norms and highlighted the regime's disregard for the lives of those it claimed to protect. Despite the heavy toll and international scrutiny, the IRGC's support for the Fatemiyoun division remains unwavering. Iran's strategic calculus views the Fatemiyoun as an indispensable asset in its broader effort to expand its influence across the Middle East. As long as Tehran's ambitions remain unchecked, the Fatemiyoun division will continue to serve as a symbol of Iran's willingness to exploit the vulnerable in pursuit of its imperial ambitions. For the Afghan fighters who survive their deployments, the dream of a better life often turns into disillusionment. Many return to Iran or Afghanistan with physical and psychological scars, only to find that the promises made to them by the IRGC were hollow. But for Iran, the Fatemiyoun division's sacrifices are a small price to pay in the pursuit of regional dominance. In the cold calculus of the IRGC, the blood of Afghan refugees fuels Iran's hegemonic ambitions, one battle, one martyr at a time.